Hey everybody, I'm here today to show you the main differences in shuffle versus cross steering, and I'll be going over which one I think is better, and the answer to that, I'll give you the answer right up front. I think that they're both great, but each one is better for specific situations. So first, let's go over the basics of each. We're going to start off with the shuffle steering technique. Now the shuffle steering technique basically looks like this. You start off with either hand on either side of the wheel. This is how you start off for both steering techniques, actually. And you're going to use one hand to bring the wheel down, shuffle to the other hand, and you're going to shuffle back and forth. Now, the shuffle steering technique is also known as the push-pull technique. That's another name for it. Depending on where you live, it might be called those two names, or it might even be called something else. There are many names for this. So that's the shuffle steering technique. Very simple, okay? You're shuffling from hand to hand. And with regards to the cross steering technique, the cross steering technique is otherwise known as hand over hand steering. And like I said, it depends on where you live. It even has additional names. But for cross steering, you're starting off like this once again. And you're going to use one hand to move the wheel while the other hand goes over, under, just like that. If I was turning the other way, it would go over, under, just like that. Okay? Once again, over, under, just like that. And then the other way, over, under, constantly over, under. Now, when you're looking at those two steering techniques, you're like, well, both of them are great. They are. And you know what? A lot of places commonly use the cross technique, and a lot of places commonly use shuffle steering. It kind of depends on where you live. Now, I usually actually use both of them, plus I also use one-handed steering to do certain things, the palming method, right? So I use all of the steering techniques, and I'm going to give you an unbiased opinion on which one I think is better for different situations. Now, they're both great. I can't say which one is better overall, and that's because they're both great. I mean, they're both great overall. I don't think any of them are better overall, but which one is better for specific situations? Well, let me show you something. With the shuffle technique, okay, let's say you're making a turn. You turn the wheel. You'll notice there's a little bit of a pause there, right? There's a little bit of a pause. When you shuffle, the wheel almost moves, pauses as you're switching, and then continues to move. So there's a little bit of a pause there. So it's great for not so sharp turns. If you're just turning the wheel, let's say this much, right? You know, like you're turning the wheel that much, you don't have to pause. When you're using the shuffle technique, let's say you're turning it that much, anything less than about 50%, you don't have to pause because you're turning it, you're holding it, and then releasing it. So there's no shuffling, right? You're shuffling, but you know, you're not really pausing the steering wheel. So I think that the shuffle technique is preferred for those situations where you're taking a turn that's not so sharp. Let's say something like that. Now the hand over hand steering technique is better in certain situations because there's no pause, right? So let's say I'm taking a sharper turn like that. There's no pause. However, it has a huge flaw, and the flaw is that your hands cross over. And that's because, like I said, that's why it's called the cross steering technique, right? Your hands cross over. So if you're in the middle of a turn and you know that that turn is going to require you to turn the wheel this much, you don't want your hands to be crossed, so don't use the cross technique. Instead, use the shuffle technique, just like that. On the other hand, if you need to take a sharper turn, something like that, then use the cross technique because your hands won't be crossed. In addition, I've found that the cross steering technique, aka the hand over hand, I kind of use these words interchangeably, but the cross steering technique, aka hand over hand, is better for turning the wheel faster. Now if you take a look, this is like the fastest I'll be able to turn with the shuffle technique. Just like that, right? Now if I bring the wheel back to where it was before, with the hand over hand, you can just see it's just so much faster. And that's because there's no pause in the shuffle. And I said hand over hand. I mean cross, hand over hand. I use those terms back and forth. But there's no pause with the shuffle. And with the cross steering technique, I'm utilizing a continual force. With the shuffle, there's that little pause, right? And with the cross steering technique, it's like boom. I'm using a continual motion like this. Sorry about these sound effects there, but you get the idea. So with regards to shuffle versus cross steering, they're both amazing steering techniques. And to be honest with you, you can use either of them and you'll be able to be a safe driver and an effective driver easily. But I tend to use both of them plus the hand over hand palming method for steering, and I just use all of these. And sometimes I even use my one finger steering method that I've done tutorials on before. Very simple method that my dad uses from time to time that I watched him use, and I'm like, wow, it's a pretty good steering method for certain specific things. Like if you're turning the wheel at a standstill and you don't need much steering control other than turning the wheel all the way to the left, such a useful technique. Turning the wheel all to the right, such a useful technique. So with regards to shuffle versus cross steering, it's kind of like a toss-up. They're both good. I would recommend using whichever one is commonly accepted where you live for your driving test. And then once, you have your license and you have the ability to choose your own steering technique, then use them all. Use whichever one is appropriate for the situation. And that's it. In this video, I've gone over shuffle versus cross steering, and I've told you what's the difference and which one is better for each specific situation. If you liked the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Let me know what you think down below as a comment. And of course, be sure to subscribe for more great car and driving videos just like this one. And that's all I have for you today. Thanks for watching.